This is the second supplemental video to the Advanced Convoy Attack tutorial. In this video, we will be taking a close look at torpedo attack envelopes and seeking to develop a full and very in-depth understanding of how these envelopes work. So let's take a look at the very simplest and by far the most intuitive torpedo attack envelope. And that is, let's suppose we are attacking one target with Mark 14 torpedoes. Mark 14 torpedo has a range of 4,500 yards. Target is in the center. We can attack from anywhere within the circle. Similarly, for a Mark 18, we can attack from anywhere inside this circle. And to make things a little more complicated, suppose we have one Mark 18 torpedo left and one Mark 14 torpedo left, and we're going to use them to attack the same target. The Mark 14's maximum range, 4,500 yards. Inside of this area, the Mark 18s are out of range. So our attack envelope is within the 4,000 yard circle. Simple enough so far. So now let's take a look at situations that are going to get much more complex. We are going to say there are two targets abreast that it's 750 yard spacing that we want to hit with the same type of torpedo simultaneously. And we will start just arbitrarily with the Mark 18 torpedo. So, how do we determine where we can and cannot attack from if we want to meet our objective of hitting both targets simultaneously? Now, this is really simple in practice. It can be a bit of work though. And usually you won't have to go to all this kind of effort unless you want to attack from fairly extreme ranges. Once you understand, or fairly extreme angles, once you understand how these work, you can usually just estimate. But we will call this target, Mark II, the near target, and we will call Mark I the far target. So, we will start at Mark 18's maximum range, which is 4,000 yards, and then we will look at its runtime. 4,000 yards is 245 seconds, and we will say arbitrarily we want 35 seconds, or whatever number you choose, but I'm going to go with 35, to switch targets and attack the near target. So it's going to be 245 seconds minus 35 means near target needs a runtime of no more than 210 seconds. So that is 3,450 yards. Make sure that these are accurate. There we go. So, we will note where these circles intersect. These points are very important. And we will then repeat this process, moving this circle in 3,500 yards, but instead of adding them all manually, I have a cheat sheet on one of my reference tables for exactly when you need to do this. So, 4,000 yards or 3,500 yards is 2950. So right here, and here, and 3,000 yards is 1950. No, 2450. Sorry. And you notice, because these are the same type of torpedo, Mark 18s at both targets, when we move this one in 500 yards, we also move this one in 500 yards. This is not the case when torpedoes have different speeds. So watch out for that. So we'll move this in 2,500 and this one to 1950. $2,000 and $1,450. Oops, wrong. Didn't manage to get the pencil there. Okay, and 1,500 to 950. And 1,000 and 450, which is minimum range. So we stop here. So we notice that our lines, and you can see there's a bit of slot because I went a little quick. It wasn't super precise, but you can see that our lines form an arc. We will extend this to 4,000 yards. Which is maximum range for the Mark 18 torpedo. I'm going to say there. It's close enough for demonstration purposes. If this really matters on your attack, then you might want to be a little bit more precise than I was there. I would say be very careful about how the game rounds, and as a practice, always make adjustment for maximum possible zoom, and I would say use a standard procedure, so you're like 3950, move a few pixels to 4,000, that sort of thing. And you do the same procedure for both circles, so that way you're not off by 25 yards or whatever. So anyways, we can attack both targets with Mark 18s from anywhere inside this arc, and excluding the minimum range bubble here. We cannot attack both targets with Mark 18s anywhere outside this arc, except we should keep in mind, in the back of our mind, that when we cross the halfway point between these two targets, this one is going to become the near target and this one is the far target. So it's mirrored. And that would also reverse our launch order. But assuming we're keeping this target as the near target and this target as the far target, and you're going to attack the far target first with the near target second, we can engage from anywhere inside this arc. If instead of a beam, targets are astern, like this, then this whole diagram rotates 90 degrees. So our arc would look something like this. Just quick and dirty, rough example. It would be in this zone. Similarly, if our target was, say, across the column and behind one ship, our arc would then would be rotated 45 degrees, so it would be about this. Just quick and dirty diagram again. Anywhere inside this zone. So what we're going to do now is get rid of these marks. We're going to leave the line there. And we are going to take a look at the same situation with Mark 14 torpedoes on fast. Need that. So, 4,500 yards is maximum Mark 14 range, and that would require 3,600 yards to the near target. Now, we notice that in this diagram, at no point do these two circles touch. And this is very important. What this means in this case is this attack with Mark 14s hitting both targets simultaneously is completely impossible. And here's why. The distance between these two targets is 750 yards. The Mark 14 torpedo will cross that distance in 29 seconds. So the absolute best that we can hope for is going to be 29 seconds, not 35. In this diagram, I'm going to bring this back into 4,000 yards for the Mark 18 and 450 for minimum range. Now keep in mind that this is just a crude center point here. But in this diagram, actually we can center it right here. That's probably where it should be anyways. If we move out further in this arc without changing our track angle, as we move out, difference between these two targets does not change. And that's very important. But in order to change our time, we must move angularly through this arc. So at this position is our minimum 35 seconds. At this position, it is the time it takes a Mark 18 torpedo to go 750 yards, which is 46 seconds. So, the range of time that we can have between attacking these two targets depends on our track angle and will range from 35 seconds to 46 seconds. If you wanted to hit both targets with Mark 14 simultaneously, again, that is a time of 29 seconds. So that is going to become a judgment call as to whether you can pull that off. And if it results in timing that is a few seconds late, then that is a judgment call on whether that is good enough. And will depend on your tactical situation, obviously. So, let's now look at a similar situation, which is two targets being attacked by the same torpedo again, but in this diagram, targets are not adjacent. we will attack this target as the far target, launch first, and this target as the near target, launch second. And we will see how skipping a ship affects our envelope. So, we're going to need a circle there. Come on. And a circle here. So 4,500 yards. No, 4,000 yards. Mark 18 max range. Which corresponds to 2950. No, 3450. 3450. Now, because we know that these same torpedo diagrams are pretty linear, although technically speaking not purely linear, and I'll get to that in a bit, what I'm going to do is I'm going to cheat a little bit and just move this in 3,000 to 3,000 yards, which will be 2450, because I don't see a need to plot every point. We're just going to plot 3, and you could do it with 2, but the third will help verify accuracy. So 2,000 and 1450. So there we go. Our arc will now be defined by these lines. With a minimum range bubble, 450 yards, and a maximum range bubble on the far target of 4,000 yards. So, comparing these two diagrams at a glance, we can see that increasing the distance between these two targets increased the engagement, or the size of the engagement zone. In fact, we can actually even be between the two targets in a very small zone here and hit both simultaneously. Practical is probably not, but it's doable. So, as you can see, the zone widened. And that is because 1,500 yards will be traversed by a Mark 18 torpedo in 92 seconds. The other factor that is not quite so apparent is that this boundary got closer to the near target by 750 yards. So, let's now take a look at Mark 14s. So, let's get rid of our marks. We don't need them. I want to make sure I delete the right thing there. Okay, so 4,500 yards, which corresponds to 3,600, which, as we can see, is doable. And 3,500 is 2,950. No, it's not. It's 2,600. Which is there and there. And a final mark to check our accuracy. 2,500 and 1,600. Puts our arc there, and we'll draw lines. So, maximum range, 4,500 yards. Minimum range, 450. So, we can see that our Mark 14 attack envelope in this scenario is smaller than the Mark 18 envelope, and that is again because the Mark 14 will cross this distance more quickly. So, let's get rid of these marks. We don't need them anymore. Oops. And I will also overlay 4,000 yard circle for future reference, which is the Mark 18 boundary. So this arc here is the Mark 18 engagement zone, and this arc is the Mark 14 engagement zone. So now let's consider the situation where we are going to attack two different targets with different types of torpedoes. Mark 18s against one target and Mark 14s against the other target. And we will see that these engagement envelopes are going to look and behave very, very differently from the same torpedo envelopes. So, let's again start from targets adjacent, abreast, 750 yard spacing. The far target will be attacked with Mark 18s, and the near target will be attacked with Mark 14s. On fast. So, we will start. The process is the same. Range of 4,500. And that matches up to 3,400. Now we can see that these do not touch, but in this diagram, the envelopes are not linear like they are up here. So we're going to keep going. So 4,000 yards and 3,100. Now note, when we move this one in, we do not move this one in by the same amount. And that is because torpedo speeds are different. So, 4,000 yards, 3,100, still not touching. So we'll bring it in to 3,500, which is 2,800. And we can see that these two circles meet at this point. And because the angle here is so acute, accuracy is a bit of a problem on this one, but an approximation is going to be good enough for our purposes. So 3,000, which is 2,450. So right here. And 2500 matches with 2150. And 2000 matches with 1850. $1,500 matches with 1,500. And 1,000 matches with 1,200. And 450 minimum range matches with 850. So, as we can see, this is a spiral relationship, though we're only interested in a small portion of the spiral, so we can approximate in-game with circles easily enough for this diagram. 1,500 yards should be good, which will give us a good approximation, except on the very extreme ends. 1,500. There we go. Now, admittedly, it's not a perfect approximation, but that's a good match there. And if we really care about this area, we can also draw, say, an 1,800 yard circle. Should be pretty close. Now, you'd just use your imagination, fill in the gap there. But it's approximately right. Okay, so maximum range on the Mark 18s was 4,000 yards. Maximum range on Mark 14s is 4,500. And the minimum range envelope is here, 450. So, in this diagram, we can attack both targets simultaneously, launching Mark 18s at this target first and Mark 14s at this target second, from anywhere inside this zone. Inside this zone, the Mark 14s are out of range. Inside this zone, the Mark 18s are out of range. And inside this zone, we will not be able to attack both targets with the 35-second difference between launching our attacks. Again, just like the diagram above, if the tactical situation allows and we flip the targets, then this zone goes over here. And if instead we are talking about hitting a target here with Mark 14s and a target here with Mark 18s, the zone that we cannot engage from will be down here instead. The diagram does rotate just like that. So, let's now take a look at what happens when the same type of engagement is done against targets that are not adjacent. In other words, increasing the spacing between targets. So, target there, target here, our Mark 14 target, and there's a target here that we're not engaging. So the process is the same, and through the magic of video editing, you won't have to watch me actually plot all of these ones. So now we've got our points all plotted, and we notice that in this situation, the nearest circles, which are 450 yards for the fast and 850 yards for the electrics, do not touch. And that's because we can actually be between these two targets and engage. So let's finish off our graph, or our diagram. 4,000 yards and 3,500 yards. I have this, no, it's 4,500 yards. No wonder that didn't sound right. And we also want to use a circle to approximate again. 2,250 yards gives a pretty good result. Not perfect, but good approximation. 2,250 yards for this side. Okay, so we can see that in this diagram, our Mark 18, yes, our Mark 18's out of range. No, our Mark 14's out of range circle zone got bigger. Our Mark 18's out of range zone got bigger. And our no engagement zone got bigger. The only thing that didn't get bigger is our engagement zone, which got substantially smaller. But it is also, even still, more flexible than what we experience with same torpedo types. And that is the virtue of the mixing Mark 14s and Mark 18s. Gives you a much wider array of tactical options. Something worth noting is that unlike on these diagrams, where moving out in the arc did not change the difference in runtime, in these diagrams, because torpedo speeds are different, moving out in the engagement zone does increase the amount of time between targets. As well, we'll just say here, as a rough approximation, moving up the circle angularly will also decrease the amount of time between targets, just like above. But distance plays a factor now. So, what I'm going to do is I'm going to put up nice versions of these diagrams in this video. So, first up, we have the same torpedo diagram with targets adjacent. And then we have same torpedo diagram with targets spaced apart. And we can see in this diagram the Mark 18 envelope is not, and the Mark 14 envelope as well. Those lines are not actually lines. They are, again, spirals. But the effect is very slight. And in those diagrams we can approximate with lines just fine. Next, we have the mixed Mark 14s and Mark 18s with targets adjacent, and the spiral nature of the 35-second boundary line is fairly apparent. And now we have the mixed Mark 14s and 18s with targets spaced apart. All of these diagrams assume a 750-yard target spacing, a minimum of 35 seconds to change targets, and all diagrams were to scale. Included in the supplemental archive with charts and tables and other things is a copy of these diagrams. And you can use the printed copy very easily to visualize your engagement zones by just holding the paper up or leaving it on the table and just rotating it to match the target aspect. Let's now put this information to practical use. We're going to do a little abstraction again. We have reconned Convoy 3x3 box, and in this convoy most of the targets are small. However, there are 3 targets that we really want to hit. 2 are top priority. These targets are a Horai Maru, dead center, 9,000 tons, big passenger liner, a Nippon Maru in the front starboard corner, which is a 10,000 ton tanker, right there. And there is also a Nagara Maru in the starboard rear corner, which I believe is 7,000 tons. Yes. And everybody else is a small target, under 2,000 tons or so. So, hitting these 2 is top priority. Hitting this one as well, we will call a secondary objective. So what we need to do is work out a plan that hits both the Horai Maru and the Nippon Maru for sure, and we also really want to hit that Nagara Maru. Think of Horai Maru and Nippon Maru as cake, and the Nagara Maru is the icing on that cake, and I really like icing. So, let's work out a plan to do this. And as you're going to see, this plan is easily the most complex we've worked so far. Going to start by drawing Convoy. Oops, there we go. Good enough. And we will get their spacing is 750 yards. You know, I suspect... Yeah, I did screw up one of those lines. I think it was that one. I just want them to be good and parallel. Okay, you know what? It doesn't really matter. That's good enough. Either way. So, oops, I need this to be 750. So, there is the track with the Horai Maru. And here is the track with Nippon Maru and Nagara Maru. And again, we'll use the grid line because it's handy. So, Nippon Maru and Horai Maru and Nagara Maru, and there is also a Haruna Maru right here that we're not going to engage, but he's just in the middle, so I'm just going to mark him. So let's envision our simultaneous torpedo attack envelopes. Hitting these two targets is simple. And just as a quick and dirty diagram, if we hit both targets with Mark 18s, our engagement envelope is going to look like this, roughly. If we hit both targets with Mark 14s, I'm not sure if that's possible, but if it is, it's going to be a very narrow diagram. If we hit Horai Maru with Mark 18s and Nippon Maru with Mark 14s, our no engagement zone would be down here. So either option allows us the flexibility to attack. Let's also consider that operating on this wing somewhere, and we don't know exactly where because they swirl around, is a destroyer. And personally, I want as much distance from that destroyer as I can get before my attack. So let's consider we could also hit this target and this target, hypothetically, with Mark 18s, but that diagram, or that envelope, would be down here somewhere. And that would not be so great for avoiding that destroyer. As you can see, we know the destroyer is operating somewhere down here. We don't want him to be on top of us during launch time. That's not good. We have this target as mandatory Mark 18s, in my opinion, because I'm not going to shoot Mark 14s across the column. And attacking this target as well with Mark 18s does not look good. So we are going to attack these two targets with Mark 18 torpedoes, and we are going to attack this target with Mark 14s on fast. We will start by drawing diagrams, because I want as much distance as possible from that destroyer. I'm going to attack from a fairly extreme angle. I will draw out the Mark 18 envelope, which is going to be 4,500 here, and 3,950, those 2 points, and I will bring this, oops, that should have been 4,000. Is that right? Should have been 4,000 and 3,400. Although those numbers actually matched anyways, but we'll correct it. 3,400. These points should be here, in fact. And we will bring this in to 3,000 yards, which is 2,450. So there. And I will use a third point to confirm. 2,000 yards. Matches with 1450. So there. And I think I screwed up the outer one again, actually. Because you notice that's not a line. So we'll recheck it. 4,000 yards. Get it right on there. Is 3450. 3450. Right there. So I got sloppy, is what happened there. So there we go. We know that our Mark 18 engagement zone on primary targets is somewhere in here. Now we want to hit this target with our Mark 14s on fast. The engagement envelope for hitting these two targets will overlap with the engagement envelope for hitting these two targets. And we need to find out exactly how. Not so interested in him anymore. Target 3 will be our fast 14s. If you're using the printable diagrams in the archive, you can envision the way this is going to look easily by turning that upside down. But we need to know exact. We will start 4,500, fast 14, and 3,400 with electrics. We also no longer need these marks, but I'm just going to recycle them because it's convenient. Or I'm going to recycle one anyways. Since we have no intention of attacking from down here, we don't really need to map this. So I'm not going to bother. All I'm interested in is this arc of the no engagement zone. We're going to bring this in to 4,000. And that is 3450. No, it's not. It is 3100. So here, and 3,500 is 2850. So right here, and 3,000 is 2450. $3,000. Just checking the accuracy. It's looking good. And bring this in to 2,500. And 2,150. And 2,000. 1,850. $1,500 and 1,500. It's right there. 1,000. And 1,200. So you can see now this portion we are going past the possible engagement zone. So I'm going to stop here and fit a circle to the no engagement area. And it's a little rough, but it's about there. Okay, so we're going to redraw this. Use an electric target. Maximum range 4,000 yards. We're going to bring it into 3,500 for a safety buffer. And this target, maximum range 4,500 yards. Again, bring it in 500 for safety buffer. So 4,000 yards. And this target, again, 3,500. Well, 4,000 with a safety buffer, 500. So 3,500. And this combination has reduced our possible engagement zone to this area. Let's get a better fit on that. That one's out of place, I think. But it's okay. That is our possible engagement zone. Right there. Now it's preference, and depending on what you're attempting to do, but okay, we're going to use this target as our baseline for track angle. And as you can see, the furthest we can possibly be from this destroyer ahead of the convoy is at a 71-degree track angle. So I'm going to attack from there. And doing this work has bought us an extra 1,200 yards from this destroyer than we would have if we had just done the quick and dirty method of saying, oh well, 90 degrees is good enough. And the importance of that extra 1,200 yards cannot be underestimated. It can be the difference between getting pinged before you get your torpedoes off and not getting pinged at all. We know our engagement zone is here. And we are going to attack from a 71-degree track angle. We're going to do some cleanup now. I'm going to note the track angle, 71 degrees. And with a Mark 18 torpedo, 71 degrees is a 9-knot target, 15-degree lead angle, so I'm going to note that as well. 15. Okay, so now it's time for cleanup. We're going to leave our 3,500 yard circle and get rid of this and this. We'll leave this circle here. Now we'll get rid of it. We've got our X's that we can use to visualize. We don't need this anymore, or that. So we still need to know range 2. We will say target 2, target 3 is going to be 2550. Okay, range to target 3 is going to be 3150. That is, let me look at my runtime table. 3500 is 215. 215. And 2550 with the Mark 18s is 156 seconds. 156. And 3150 with Mark 14s on fast is 122. So that is actually a 34-second difference there. But I'm going to call that good enough. We could move it down a degree and fix it, but I'm not going to. 156. Now, you notice from this position, 71 degrees, only one of these shots can be a zero gyro shot. To that end, I'm going to call that target the Horai Maru. And the reason for that is 1, he is the furthest target, and 2, the making him the zero gyro angle will sort of equalize the gyro angles on these two targets. We will need to know now the attack timing. 215 minus 156 means we will engage Nippon Maru at 59 seconds with electric torpedoes. 59. And 215 minus 122 is 93 seconds to attack Nagara Maru, the icing on our cake, with Mark 14s on fast. And that is 1 minute and 33 seconds from Torpedo 1. We've got that part of the plan worked. We now need to know when to turn. Let's see. So I'm going to draw a line representing our course. Just quick and dirty, right through the attack point. As you recall, the lead angle was 15 degrees, and if you don't recall, it's right there, 15 degrees. From a 71 degree track angle. There we go. 15 degrees. Now what I recommend is you come in from over and move the mouse until it just turns, which is technically 15.5, but rounding that way gives you a safety distance for when we turn, instead of doing it this way, which is technically 14.5 degrees. 15 degrees. It will take us, and I don't have an exact number, but as an estimate, to turn 71 degrees will take us about 4 minutes and 10 seconds. A Bale-class submarine. 9-knot target. 4 minutes, 10 seconds is 1250 yards. Getting some interface lag. There we go. Okay, there we go. Still a little jumpy, but seems to be improving. We have his distance, or distance of travel, so we need to measure the angle, which will be, we can get rid of this, 43 degrees, and I'm going to throw in a bit of safety factor and just call it 41. When target is at 41 degrees, we will turn to bearing specified by a 71 degree track angle. We will engage Horai Maru when he is on 15 degrees with a 0 gyro shot, 2 Mark 18s from the bow, and we will then engage Nippon Maru with a 0 gyro shot, or not a 0 gyro shot, but with 2 Mark 18s from the bow, and we will then finally engage Nagara Maru at 1 minute and 33 seconds with 2 Mark 14s from the bow. Let's see how this plan plays out. Okay, so Horai Maru should now be at about bearing 3-4. We will check with the periscope. Yes, there he is. And we need to get the targets into the identified for the TDC. So there's Nippon Maru, and there's Nagara Maru over here, and set up the position keeper. I am going to fire close to 0 gyro, but since I'm not engaging multiple targets in a 0 gyro fashion, I'm just going to use the position keeper to save myself some stress. Come on. There it is, 9 knots. Angle on the bow would be about that, I think. Oops, we need that. Oh, come on. There we go. And there's range. Get the position keeper going. Correct angle on the bow. I should have known it was less than 45. I don't know what I was thinking. Okay. So position keeper set up and running. Waiting for Horai Maru to be on bearing 4-1. Keep in mind this is a little crude at the moment. So set up our torpedoes. And that's all I really want to do. Just waiting for Horai Maru to be on position 4-1. We will then turn to starboard to 71 degree track angle, which we measured out as heading 3-3. Just a few seconds. And there it is.
Yes, sir. Hard to starboard.
So, waiting on heading 3-3. Still have a good 30 degrees to go, so I'm going to update the position keeper. Except Nippon Maru's in the way, so just wait. go. Okay, it's looking good. Just waiting for heading 3-3. Let's also open the doors.
Yes, sir. Rudder, 0. Yes, sir. 0.
And check our course.
Yes, sir. New course. 3, 2. Yes, sir. New course.
Just a degree off.
Yes, sir. Hard to starboard. Rudder, 0.
And that should fix it or get it
Yes, sir.
close enough that I really don't care. Reduce speed to 1 knot.
Speed, 0.
And prepare to fire on bearing 345. 15 to port. Which will be very soon. Range change hardly at all, so we've got a pretty good track. Just a few more seconds. Going to update his range one more time. There it is. And I want to hit there. And right between the stacks. And now, Nippon Maru, who we will fire on at 58 seconds. 59 seconds. We will do this again. I didn't like that reading. I was distracted. Just angle on the bow. There we go. Fresh range. There we go. And one more range update. And I want to put another one right there. Dang it. Okay, now Nagara Maru. We don't have much time for, so we got to be quick. 142. Fix that. It's a little late on Nagara Maru, but I don't think it'll matter much. All torpedoes away, diving, turning away. Got a bit of a wait.
Current depth 80. Current depth 100.
Just go to externals, see what's happening.
Current depth 120. Current depth 140. Current depth 160. Current depth 180.
So they've spotted the torpedoes.
Current depth 200. Torpedo impact. Torpedo impact.
Hits on target 1 and 2. 1 and 2 again. And 3. And 3.
Current depth 220.
Son of Ponmaru's broken up. 2 good hits on Nagaramaru.
Current depth.
Both in the bow, pretty close together looks like. And 2 good hits on Horaimaru. Well, I missed slightly astern.
3, 4, 0.
So Horaimaru's going down by the stern. And Nagaramaru's looking awful heavy in the bow. Surely sinking as well.
Current depth.
Got some
3,
tanks on
6,
there.
0.
It's kind of neat. That's the end of this video, and I hope that this video has been informative. This is one of the more advanced subjects in this series of videos. So I hope I did a good job of explaining it, and I hope that this video has been informative. So I'll see you next time.